What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Corey MGS and Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the May 29th, 2021 edition of Talking Smack. As always, being hosted by Caleb Braxton and Paul Heyman, who are just an absolutely amazing duo by this point. And I'm sure I've said this before, but their chemistry is just off the charts. Like Heyman, when he first joined the show, what was it, late last year when they first brought back Talking Smack? Like, they had Sami Zayn in the host role. They had Xavier Woods initially. They had The Miz for a little while. I think he was the very first one because it was supposed to be Woods and he wasn't there. There was like some miscommunication, blah, blah, blah. They have Heyman now. They've had him for a long time. He has been absolutely excellent. Like, especially getting under Kayla's skin. And Kayla's really come into her own as well. And she's always been a great host and like doing stuff like with the bump and whatever. But even with, especially with stuff like this, it really is incredible to see how great their dynamic is. They work so well together and they really bring the best out of their guests, even when they don't say a lot. Like, even Heyman himself is guilty for saying a lot without really saying anything at all. And a lot of the guests have that same, I don't know if you would call it a problem, but they do a lot of that same thing here on Talking Smack and a lot of the WWE talk shows. But they make it entertaining if nothing else, so I appreciate that. The first order of business they get to is that Kayla announces that SummerSlam will be happening on Saturday, August 21st this year, not that Sunday. It's not going to be that Sunday this year. It's going to be Saturday, August 21st, with a date, or rather location, to be announced. I think on June 5th, next Saturday, during like the NBC race or something. I don't remember. Reportedly, it's just one giant clusterfuck right now over at WWE in terms of determining the location, and they saved the date because that's what Vegas wanted because it was supposed to be in Vegas, apparently. That was strongly speculated, heavily rumored. Now there's a fight between Pacquiao and I forgot who he's fighting, but there's a boxing fight going on that same night also in Vegas. That was confirmed earlier this month. Apparently they saved the date for Vegas a fucking month ago or before the fight was made official. So it's just a mess over there right now. It doesn't look like it will be in Vegas. Hey, if it's over here in the Northeast, I can't complain. I guess we'll find out in due time. But yeah, so they announced the date for SummerSlam. Heyman really, really wants to get the location out of her, thinking that she knows. Obviously, she doesn't, but that's like a running gag throughout the show, which is great. Heyman also, at this point in the episode, emphasizes he does not watch Raw. I don't even know why they were talking about Raw, but you guys, listen, are you really asking me that question? I do not watch Raw. Sometimes I catch the highlights. There's no Roman Reigns. So much for Monday Night Raw, and he puts his phone down, which I thought was great. Kayla recaps the Usos beating the Street Profits earlier on in the night on SmackDown, which was a great match, and I talked about that in my SmackDown audio review from yesterday if you want to check it out. Heyman said that he was remarkably impressed with the Usos and that they're likely well on their way to becoming the next SmackDown Tag Team Champions, which we'll get to a little bit later on. And then that was when Heyman accused Kayla of flirting with him, which he's done a bunch of times. He specifically did it with Sonya, which is comical, for the obvious reasons. And I don't know, it was just great. And I don't think Sonya was on the show this week. Sonya feels like she's more on Raw and Adam Pearce is more on SmackDown. I might be wrong about that, but that's just kind of how it's been recently. But anyway, so I thought that was great. And then the first guest they have on, they only have, three people technically, but only like two real segments of guests. Usually they have three, which is why they kind of spent more time in the beginning killing time than usual. And it was still the same length show. It was around 25 minutes if you don't count in Peacock commercials and stuff. The first person they had on was Bayley, who claims Kayla is obsessed with her because she keeps having her on the show, and then Kayla's like, listen, I don't have a say in who's on the show and who's not, so don't get ahead of yourself here. And she also asks Bayley, oh, that's a nice shirt. Where can I get it? And Bayley said, well, you could buy it on WWE Shop. Kayla asks, well, can you autograph it for me? And Bayley's like, oh, yeah, sure, because I know you're a fan, you love me, blah, blah, blah. And Kayla's like, okay, cool, because I need more rags to clean my house with, which was, she started dying after that, and I thought that was a great line, and obviously Bayley was taken aback by it. It was just a great moment. So Bayley is, again, a classic case here, at least on this episode, of not really saying anything at all. They have a very entertaining back and forth to Bayley and Kayla specifically. They just kind of recap what we've already heard. Bayley says that Bianca cheated at WrestleMania Backlash using her hair, which she calls a foreign object. And Kayla says, how is it a foreign object if it's part of her body? And Bayley said, well, it's still cheating. Kayla made the case, well, isn't it the same thing as using something that's attached to you, like your arm, to attack people? And Bayley said, well, that's a good point. Like, she kind of conceded at that point, which was great. She lists off her WrestleMania moments and that, Bianca doesn't really need, or her own WrestleMania moments, that is, for Bayley. and she kind of, she mentioned that, Bianca really shouldn't be parading around talking about all of her accomplishments and blah, 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 and how great she is, at least in Bayley's opinion, and that's her issue with Bianca right now. And she says that Bianca is a cheater, and I quote, a cheater masquerading around as a champion. The next people they have on are Dominic and Rey Mysterio, the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, who successfully retained their titles on Friday's SmackDown. Dominic says that it was time for him to step up after, Rey was attacked earlier on in the show when he was praying the same way that Dominic was attacked back at WrestleMania Backlash. Dom had to step up for the team. He did. He retained the titles. And Rey says that come next Friday when they defend those tag team titles against the Usos, Dom's going to be ready to step up then as well, and they're not going to back down. That's when Heyman kind of gave him his classic pep talk saying that, listen, I don't know what critics Kayla's talking about, but anyone who is criticizing you guys or isn't a fan of you clearly doesn't know what they're talking about. You guys, when you won the SmackDown Tag Team titles, you proved your fans right. And he shows them plenty of respect and offers them plenty of praise before shaking their hands. And, being the slimeball character that he is, Paul Heyman, I'm sure, would turn his back on him in a second, but at least he's kind to their face here on the show. And then, they say they appreciate that, and they vow to win next week and retain their titles. So at the very end of the episode, Kayla hypes up next week's 2 title matches. Like I said, the Usos versus Dominic and Rey Mysterio for the SmackDown Tag Team titles, and Apollo Crews versus Kevin Owens for the Intercontinental Championship, and Commander Aziz will be banned from ringside for that match. This is when Heyman kind of goes off in his weekly tangent. First of all, trying to get the SummerSlam location out of Kayla for a minute or so, which was great, like I said earlier. And then he talks about how he met the Usos back in the summer of 1989, back when he was managing the Samoan SWAT team when they beat the Road Warriors that night. And he recalled them kind of like beating up on each other and doing the splash on each other and knowing they kind of had a future, blah, blah, blah. He calls them naturals in the ring. And the Mysterios are going to have their hands full next week when they defend those tag team titles against the Usos. He himself is intrigued by that title match, and so is Roman Reigns, who Kayla's going to have to acknowledge, according to Paul. He currently acknowledges. Jay currently acknowledges. And Jimmy, he says, I'm sure, will soon acknowledge him as his tribal chief. So kind of hinting at dissension there with Jimmy Uso, which is why I don't think they're walking out next week, the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, and they really shouldn't. I honestly think it's too soon, and I love the Usos. I'm very much looking forward to that match. It feels way too rushed, but, I would have the Usos lose via miscommunication or whatever, and we either get an Uso match at Hell in a Cell or a Jimmy Uso-Roman Reigns match. I've heard that Roman isn't facing Jimmy at the pay-per-view. Maybe Roman's not defending his title at all on that show, which is, for 1 month, is fine. I don't know, but I'm intrigued to see where it goes, that's for sure. But this was the usual quality edition of Talking Smack. Really nothing of note said here. Ray, Dom, and Bayley were all kind of saying the same stuff that we've already heard before and we already knew. But they did a good job of hyping up next week's show and kind of planting the seeds for Hell in a Cell and building the Bayley and Belair, rivalry and building specifically to next week's tag team title match and making those titles feel more important than they have in a very long time. And like I said, the highlight of these shows every single week, especially with Daniel Bryan gone now, unfortunately, is the ongoing chemistry between Kayla Braxton and Paul Heyman. They're just absolutely fantastic together. And, they really bring the best out of their guests, and they really just make the show very entertaining, even though nothing of note is usually said from the guests more often than not. At least that makes it worthwhile, which is cool. So thank you guys for checking out this review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have an awesome rest of your Memorial Day weekend, guys. My review of the Broken Skull Sessions with The Godfather, obviously hosted by Stone Cold Steve Austin, should be up on Monday. So keep an eye out for that, as well as my interview with WWE superstar Shayna Baszler. So like I said earlier, if you haven't already, please subscribe. You're not going to want to miss out on the content coming up in the days and weeks to come. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.